Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Rubino. This is my colleague, Swapna Bellare. I'm a UX designer at Magento, and she is a UX researcher. And today we're going to be talking about collaborative design and how you could actually utilize collaborative research to improve the way your product team works together. I'm going to try to keep this light and quick because I know it's 4:30. It's been a grind of a day, so we'll keep this light and fun. So this is how I think of the product triad. In the enterprise world, this is really easy to understand because I sit next to a lot of these people, but in more of our Magento ecosystem, you might not be sitting right next to these people. Your engineering group might be at an agency, your product management group might be at the merchant, and user experience might be scattered at both. So product management, what they're mostly responsible for is determining whether or not we should build features and will they actually make us money, right? And user experience wants to ensure that your product is usable. So will users actually adopt it and enjoy using it? And engineering, they're the folks who are on the hook for figuring out how to make the thing and determining whether or not it's feasible. And so it's really important for your product to have each three of these legs of the stool to be really balanced and provide a stable platform for your product to live. And the product is not like a new baby, right? It's fragile, it needs stability, and it needs to be nurtured in order to grow. However, in some organizations, your stool is not balanced. One leg of the stool overpowers the others, tries to make political gains, this and that, and you could see it's not a very stable foundation, and you could also see what happens to your product. Your product suffers and is crying and unhappy. So how can you actually strengthen the triad? There's a number of ways you could do this, but one way that Swapna and I have had success in is actually through developing shared understanding via collaborative research. So shared understanding is when, again, three legs of the stool are actually talking the same language, they are agreeing on process, and actually collaborating together to determine what's best for the product. And again, maybe you guys are still skeptical and saying, this is great for enterprise when you all sit next to each other, but how do we actually do this in our consumer-facing space? So in the enterprise space, we care about things like ROI, right? Users pay indirectly, but pay to use our products. So we want to ensure that they're getting their money's worth, that they're actually able to make more than what they're spending on our product. Also in the enterprise space, we care about task efficiency. So we don't want people spending hours at a time in our application, in our product. They have a goal or a mission to achieve, and we want to enable them to get in, do the thing they're there to do, and then get out quickly. So task efficiency is very important to us. On the other side of the spectrum, there's more consumer-facing products, like many of the e-commerce stores that y'all build with Magento. So on the consumer front, consumers are really fickle, right? So we want to optimize conversion, because if they're looking to buy a thing on your site and your site's very difficult for them to check out and convert, they'll go somewhere else to buy the thing that they need. So conversion is really important. Also brand stickiness. So does your shopping experience communicate the same message you want your brand to communicate? And how do we track this? So different data points, but in reality, all four of these things are essentially user sentiment and user behavior. So what are users doing? How are they doing them, and why are they doing them? And we've been able to, again, as a product team, as a triad, learn about these user behaviors through our collaborative research process. And our UX research expert, Swapna here, is going to begin walking us through what this process entails. So. Yep.
So we first start with strategize, and what it means is you want to have a shared understanding between your stakeholders, the UX, the PM and the design and the engineering team. So how do you get that? You get them all together in one room, face to face. You tell them to write what they want to learn, and we don't want to put them any constraints. We want them to be as open. They want to, share what they want to learn. We put them in sticky notes, as you can see here. And it's a 10-minute activity that we do, and we put all our sticky notes onto the whiteboard. And then the UX designer and the researcher work together to categorize them into some common clusters. Then everybody gets around, puts the dot voting, and determines what the priorities are. What you see over here is we did for our cloud research. We came up with different topics that the team wanted to learn, and we put priorities based. So this is a shared understanding discussion, like a workshop that we do often for our projects. The next step is the content from that workshop actually informs a learning plan. A learning plan is nothing but a study document. It can be in any form that you like to. We follow this learning plan. So a lot of the content and the priorities come into each of these sections. So it's a very scientific process. We discuss, we build consensus, we disagree, but we come to an agreement finally. And here are some sections that you will see over here that actually informs the learning plan. We have a template of that in appendix that we always use. And we've added a little bit of additional sections over there. You can always change and move around, but the important thing is you need to have a hypothesis, like an assumptions that you want to go with, what you want to test. What are the different priorities that you all want to learn at this point in time, and what are the different methods, the deliverables, and mainly the impact that it's going to make either for your product or your design strategy. Going on to next, usually the researchers know what methods we want to use based on the questions that people are asking, but sometimes we're not very well aware, and we need this matrix. Earlier on, even right now, sometimes I do use this matrix if I want to plot which method is important. So what you see over here is a quadrant, and it has an X and Y, as you can see. The vertical axis is if you want to learn about people's behavior or attitudes, the questions that you would want to get answered, like, do you want to see what they're doing, or do you want to listen to what they're saying? Once you make that decision, you go on to the horizontal axis, which tells you how you're going to actually collect the data. Is it going to be words and thoughts and stories, or examples, or past experiences, or you want numbers, you want statistics, and you can basically pick any of these. Once you make that decision, you kind of know where you want to actually put that point in this quadrant. One thing that you don't see over here is a context of product use. So sometimes you want to see the users using your product, which is having a contextual use of your product. And at times, maybe it's a very new product, you don't have it in the market, it's a new idea that you're building on, then it's either you're talking to participants who are using your competitive products or using no products at all. So this is a little heavy slide, but once you make the decisions about the questions you want to learn, here are the different research methods that map to it. We again have a detailed list of research methods, the protocols, the rules, how you actually conduct these research methods in the appendix. You're free to take a look at it, download it, and then pick the ones that matches your priorities and the needs. To give you a brief understanding what this quadrant is, more on the left side, you will see a lot of observation. You're making them, be in the context of their use. You're watching them. You're either listening to them face to face. And on to the right-hand side is all about analytics and surveys and a lot about numbers and something that you want to validate in terms of size and frequency. So how we actually execute this, once you have a plan, it's agreed upon, you actually want to start working on that plan. So this is where you actually get your hands dirty. You first start from recruitment. What recruitment means in the research sense is you want to talk to the right person. You don't want to talk to anyone who's available out there, but you want to make sure that you're picking the right person. You know you studied about them either through secondary research that you have or industry research. You're creating a detailed profile screener or some sort of like a resume about the participant you want to talk. And then look for these candidates either through your own database or either through market research panels outside. And when you catch hold of a right person, you want to talk to them, you want to reach out to them, you plan and schedule a session based on their convenience. Here are some tips that we have for you all to read over, when you all download this presentation. So you may pick any research method that meets your needs. We want to give you an example of an interview guide that we always use. And it's really helpful for us because most of our participants are remote, they are globally located. We cannot always visit their site, so we always use an interview method. It's a commonly used method in research. So some of the things that you need to make sure that your interview guide should have is the right questions. And how do you frame these questions? So we usually follow a hourglass framework, as I would say. You start with very broad questions, like warm-up questions, what their roles are, what their profile is. Then you deep down a little bit, to very specific contextual questions, like, what do you do when you're working on this product? Or this is a use case we want to see, and how can you show us and walk us through that? And then ease them off to very broad contextual questions, like the ideal experience or how they want to see the product in the next 5 to 10 years. So this gives them an understanding that it's not a very heavy interview, but it's kind of, has its ups and downs. Here are some general tips. Make sure that the interviews that you do are very friendly. You inform them about what to expect from an interview. There's a compensation that you all will discuss with them beforehand. And basically have a two-way conversation, listen more, and be like this friendly person who is really genuinely curious about what they're doing at workplace. Some of the sessions is, again, I said, be very open to what the feedback they are sharing with you. Don't be assumption. If they need time to discuss something that they need to take a break, then let them take a break, and let them share their workplace. Make sure that they are, immersed in that experience and then sharing with you freely. Here are some of the tips that you all can read, how to conduct the right interview. As again, it's an art, but I think when you have these basic rules, I think it's easier with experience as well. Now we have so much rich data that comes from these participants. It's almost like we have plenty of data points, but you want to communicate a very good story to them. So we have some techniques that Michael would want to share with you now.
Great, thank you, Swapna. So moving on to the communicate step, the first step we have here is actually synthesis. So we just ran through a series of interviews, and we want the triad to come back together. So in this picture, you could see me in UX. Next to me is our lead developer, and on the opposite side there is our product manager. And we're actually going through the interview guide line item by line item, person by person, and we're looking for trends. We're looking for repeat feedback and any sort of aha eureka moment. So anything that has light bulbs, going off. Another thing that's interesting to me in these sessions is you'll get one piece of feedback, and it's amazing how each role interprets the same piece of feedback. So a developer is going to hear something and interpret it one way. A product person or UX person is going to hear the same piece of feedback and think of something totally different. So these sort of synthesis sessions are really crucial. And the whole point of this is doing it together, right? It's one thing if one party of the triad runs off and does a bunch of research and then tells the rest of the team about it. It's another thing if the team was there with them, hearing it right from the customer, right from the end user throughout the whole process. So here is where we synthesize. We turn this synthesis into deliverables. So this is largely, at least in our organization, led by the UX team. So take all of that great profiling information that Swapna outlined and turn it into a user persona. See how many user personas you have. If you're examining an end-to-end journey or an end-to-end experience, turn it into a journey map. to document each step, each phase of this process, and track the user's emotional arc throughout. If you're analyzing different scenarios, a deliverable like a storyboard or comic strip could be good. So you could have different scenarios, and it really explains what the users go through at each step. These deliverables are also kind of engaging. So as you communicate this out to your larger organization, people have something to sink their teeth into, and it really helps build that empathy for the user that we're looking for. Another thing we do at Magento is lunch and learn. So after our immediate triad, that's been there throughout the whole research journey, they know what's going on. We talk to our next circle of stakeholders, but then we also want to open it up to the entire organization and impact sort of that tribal knowledge, that hive mind, and impact their understanding of what's going on. So we host these lunch and learns, and we notice that we get a lot of requests for more research in different product areas after we do this. So it's a great way to gain allies and garner more interest in research. And the last step in the process, and probably the most important, is to actually apply what you learned. So it's great to learn things, but we want to actually have it impact our product. So we could run something like a collaborative ideation workshop based on learnings that you find. So you can, again, have the triad represented here, run something like a rapid time-boxed sketching exercise, have everyone, in 10 minutes sketch out 10 ideas, present them very quickly, have everyone dot vote on what ideas they like or different aspects of each idea they like, and then do it again. But this time, say you have to use an idea that got voted on. So this way, the ideas no one likes naturally sort of fall away, and what you're left with is good ideas that everyone seems to agree upon. Then you could take those ideas and run them through this matrix. So map them according to level of effort it would take to implement them, and also map them against the user value it would have. So you'd have end up with a map similar to what we have here, and you're looking for those ideas that end up in that magic quadrant of low effort to implement with high user value. And then I don't know about you guys, but at Magento, nothing happens unless it's a ticket in Jira. So make sure you take those ideas from your magic quadrant, get them turned into tickets, put them in a backlog, and work with your product manager to get them prioritized accordingly. So I know we went through a lot today. So I'll just recap very quickly. Strategize together, come up with a plan together so everyone's on board. Get that sign off that everyone agrees that these are the things we want to learn the most. Execute together. Again, the journey is why the triad gets strengthened through this. If you're just telling people what you learned, it's not going to have the impact than if they were there in the car with you taking this ride. Learn together. Utilize and leverage everyone's different vantage point. Like I said, an engineer is going to hear the same thing you've heard, but think about it differently. So really, those differences are really what bring power to knowledge, right? And the last step, apply it to your product, watch it grow with that stable foundation that you strengthened through this collaborative research process. Well, thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day.